So like I said, thanks again for joining the Submitting Your Sienna Solutions Challenge project webinar. Like I mentioned before, my name is Carissa Bowen, and I am a project manager who works primarily on the Sienna Solutions Challenge, and a few of my teammates are who also work alongside myself. We all kind of work together to kind of get the Sienna Solutions Challenge project up and running. So we're really excited to see everyone's work. And just a few outcomes before we, kind of begin, and what you'll learn from this webinar, primarily really just giving you an opportunity to understand how you can submit, or how your team can submit, a compelling project. And you'll learn a little bit more about how projects are evaluated. One key piece to this webinar is really just to make sure that we are really clear in the submission requirements. And if you have any questions about possibly the Sustainability Award or the judging criteria or anything else, this is the webinar for you to ask questions, and hopefully you'll get the answers that you're looking for. So if this is your first time joining, I do want to do a run through of what the Sienna Solutions Challenge is. The Sienna Solutions Challenge is a global design challenge inviting students and teachers to design solutions to real problems or issues and take action to build a better world. This challenge does invite educators to engage in the challenge-based learning framework. And essentially, we are inviting students to submit projects using technology, or creative ways of using technology to enhance or create solutions to things that they really care about and things that they're really passionate about. And so we're super excited to be working with Sienna, which is a networking systems, services, and software company who has a digital inclusion program which aims to mobilize aims to mobilize the company's global workforce, really leverage its innovation leadership, and collaborate with customers across the world to bridge the digital divide. And Sienna has committed to fund $10 million USD over a 5-year period on programming that promotes digital inclusion through greater connectivity, access to technology, and digital skilling, with the goal of expanding opportunities for 100,000 underserved students in our global communities. And so that's just a little bit about Sienna. And just digging back into the Sienna Solutions Challenge, students are really encouraged to think big, ask thoughtful questions, and develop meaningful and actionable solutions to issues or things that they care about in their community. And so who is eligible to participate? Any in-school and out-of-school educator or teacher, maybe a librarian, after school, pretty much anyone who has a touch point and supports a group of students, primarily middle and high school students between the ages of 11 through 19 years of age, are eligible to participate. So if you're an educator who's affiliated with a public school, a private school, registered homeschool, or a legally recognized educational program, like I mentioned before, a museum, an after-school program, a youth agency, a library, you are eligible to participate. And students are encouraged to leverage digital tools and technologies in their actions and solutions. So students can pretty much create anything that will enhance their world, like a product or device, a campaign or a piece of media, a physical space or environment, an experience or system or something else. You can surprise us. We really, one thing I want to mention, and I'll talk a little bit I'll talk deeper about this in the next few slides, is, we are not looking for students to use the most fanciest piece of technology or the most expensive piece of technology. We really want to hone in on students using technology that is at their reach, that is accessible to them, and things that they are interested in. And we want to make sure that we're really emphasizing that. So I'll talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. So how will projects be shared? So the Siena Solutions Challenge online gallery is essentially where teams can submit an unlimited number of projects. And so when it comes to the Siena Solutions Challenge Sustainability Award, all eligible teams can reference up to 5 projects that they want to be considered for a sustainability award of 2,500 USD dollars. And so if you wish to sustain or scale your project, if your teams are really interested in their ideas and they want to scale their projects, feel free to, we really welcome you all to take that chance and share your projects with us and to be considered for the Sustainability Award. And the deadline to submit projects has actually been extended to January 31st, just given the COVID Omicron variant. We understand that many schools and educators and districts really pretty much around the world are being impacted by COVID in a way that we've seen before, but we know that this is a really heightened time for everyone. And so this is a new announcement. You will be getting a newsletter about it after this call is over. So I just wanted I'll mention this again for anyone who's not on the call now, but maybe will attend a little bit later. So you won't hear this for the first time. This will be mentioned again. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the project submission process. Just some things to keep in mind. If you're new to the Siena Solutions Challenge, or maybe you haven't really heard of it before, or you knew a little bit about it, but you maybe have not registered, we first want you to register to become a registered educator at sienachallenge.org. And from there, you'll be able to access your dashboard, you'll be able to access resources, and of course, the project submission area. Excuse me, project submission portal. And then to register, you can click sign up at the top right of the page, and you'll have access to draft and enter a submission under My Submissions. So just a note, before applying for the Siena Solutions Challenge Award, teams should have progressed through the engage, investigate, and act stages of the challenge-based learning inquiry cycle and have a project or projects that they wish to sustain or scale. Something else to keep in mind that we have heard from a few educators, amid, of course, given, again, where we are in the state of the world as it pertains to COVID-19 and its variants. We understand that many educators have not been able to make touch points with their students and have only been able to maybe contact them through email or through other means of virtual learning. And we understand that and we want to fully acknowledge that. So there is a portion in the project submission portal where educators will be submitting a reflection video on behalf of students. So if you are one of those educators who has not been able to meet with their students in person, but you want to, of course, keep their information and their insights at the top of mind within the reflection video, we do encourage educators to record a reflection video on their team's behalf. Please use insights from your students' activities to share school or organization's involvement in the Sienna Solutions Challenge. What was investigated, what was learned, what have you all reflected on, an overview of your actions, the impact, if any, of these actions on your local community and how these actions relate to the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's, you can also find this on the frequently asked questions area on siennachallenge.org, just as a reminder, or if you're taking notes, you don't have to take too many because this information is completely on our website. And then one last thing to keep in mind, we totally understand, and the beauty, I think, of this project is that teams can start at an idea, and let's say your students are not completely ready to share a fully fleshed out product. Maybe you started a little late in the year, or maybe your students with your school went virtual and you were right in the middle of it, and now your students are not able to completely finish their ideas. But if students do have a prototype, or excuse me, teams have its prototype of the product, we do encourage teams to submit a prototype if their product isn't completely finished. The prototype must demonstrate a strategic use of technology. And so I'll talk about what a strategic use of technology is in the next slide. But I do want to just mention, if you are one of those educators who says like, hey, we want to sustain and scale our product, but we're not completely, there yet, but here's our prototype, here's how we're, sharing it with a creative use of technology, we are totally welcoming of that. So these are just a few items to keep in mind, but if you go to siennachallenge.org under frequently asked questions or under the submission requirements, you can learn a lot more about the project submission process and what you should be considering as you start submitting your products. Excuse me, your projects. So now we'll talk a little bit about the Sustainability Award and the judging rubric. And so if you are considering, which we hope everyone is considering submitting a project to be considered for a Sustainability Award, a few things to keep in mind. Like I mentioned before, educators can submit an unlimited number of projects to be featured in our Sienna Solutions Challenge online gallery. You can submit however many projects you'd like, but you can only reference up to 5 projects to be considered for the Sustainability Award. And so I do want to show you all what that looks like. So I actually can't see my chat box, but I want to make sure that you all can see my screen and where I'm at right now. So if you can see my screen, if you can just type yes in the chat box, or if you want to quickly unmute, that would be super helpful. And if not, I'm just going to keep going. So right now I'm logged into the Sienna Solutions Challenge website, and here, like I mentioned before, you can see all of your different tabs here, but the one we're going to focus on is my submissions. So I've been obviously playing around a few times with our gallery, but this is just kind of what I wanted to show you all. You can submit your project to the gallery here. You see I have about 4 projects here, but when I go to the Apply for Sustainability Award, this is where you can essentially select up to 5 projects that you want to be considered for the Sustainability Award of $2,500. And so I just wanted to make sure that I showed everyone this in real time, in case you all are wondering, I don't know what this means or what this looks like. This is essentially what you will see when you're ready to submit. Um, and one more thing that I wanted to also mention as it pertains to the Sustainability Award and the judging rubric. We have been fortunate enough to have a nice size group of volunteers from Siena who are Siena employees who are super excited and super thrilled to take a look and really evaluate the Siena Solutions Challenge projects. And so we have had many conversations with our volunteers. Like I said before, they're really thrilled to learn a little bit about more of what your students are interested in and what their skills are, and really just, you know, what they're able to come up with and what they're able to create. And so we'll also have a few Digital Promise team members who are also volunteer judges. So a few folks from my team will also be volunteers. So just wanted to give you all a heads up because when you do receive, after you have submitted your project and, you know, the deadline is completed, we will be sending you all some feedback from your projects. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up of what that may look like and who the feedback is coming from. And then another thing about the award funding, we've had a few questions about, you know, what can I do with the award funding? Like, what is it, you know, intended to support? And so I wanted to make sure I pulled this out for those who will be submitting projects for the Sustainability Award. The award funding essentially is intended to support participating schools and youth organizations to sustain and scale their projects and challenge activities in conjunction with existing community resources. For example, funds might be used to purchase materials, supplies, or equipment for printing or production costs, or for activities, or maybe field trips, guest speakers, workshops, exhibitions, different experiences that can really enhance the skills and capacity of students and their community to sustain or scale their projects and challenge activities. So when we're looking for, you know, when we talk about projects that are compelling, this is a key piece, and I'll actually go to the next slide. This is a great segue to just talk about what the Sustainability Award requirements are. You can find this information at sienachallenge.org. It's literally screenshotted exactly from the website. So you have a reflection video, which is a collaborative video that should synthesize and summarize all of your team's involvement in the challenge and how they, you know, relate to the sustainable development goals. A description of how the project demonstrates the creative use of technology. A description of how your team will benefit from the $2,500 Sustainability Award, and a description of any existing resources your team will use to scale and sustain your solution. This might include key people in the community, community support, different organizational structures, along with the use of existing tools and equipment. So if you know that your your project is going to be supported by existing resources, feel free to include that. That's, you know, one of the key pieces that we are looking for is making sure that we know, you know, or we're aware of what and how your project would be sustained even beyond the challenge. And then, of course, a budget breakdown of how the $2,500 award will be used to sustain your work. And so I just kind of talked about that briefly in the previous slide. So I want to make sure that you all kind of see that. And I did talk a little fast, so feel free to stop me or come off mute, and you can ask any questions if I'm talking too fast. All right, and then when it comes to the judging criteria, you know, we have different percentages for each of those submission requirements for the Sustainability Award. So the reflection video is 15%, the purpose and message of your project portfolio is 20%, creative use of technology, 20%, and use of existing resources 15%, and use of award funding 30%. And all of these components are very important, but I do want to pay close attention to the creative use of technology. Like I mentioned earlier in the webinar, we're not looking for students and teams to use the most expensive piece of technology. We really want students to, utilize the resources that are within their reach, utilize the technology that is accessible to them. And, just kind of keep that in mind, that submission includes outputs that showcase creative use of technology to address the challenge. Technology should be strategically integrated either in your prototype or in your finished product, if you have that, as part of actions taken by students. So we've had a few questions about, what type of technology, what does this mean, how, just kind of how to break that down. So I wanted to make sure that I leveled that up. You can also see that use of award funding, 30%, is pretty high. It's pretty packed. So, keep that in mind as you are, completing your, or I guess kind of building your case for your projects to be sustained. We have sort of advised, volunteers what to look for when we know that everyone's product is going to be different. Everyone's project is different. Everyone's challenge will likely be very different. And that's the beauty of the Siena Solutions Challenge that's coming from all over the world. So we're super excited to see how your team is able to describe how the award funding will be used to sustain and scale the project initiative in conjunction with the existing community resources, that your community has, and really shows the benefit of the award funding to students and class, students/class and the students community. So I want to make sure that keeping this at the top of our minds, if you have not already seen this, you can download the Siena Solutions Challenge Gallery Submission Form PDF. This is downloadable. I'm actually gonna show you what this looks like, or where you can find it. Under submission requirements, you can see this, the download. You can download a detailed version of the submission requirements and judging criteria. And what we found in our pilot program, we actually hosted a pilot early April, where we had a few educators from all over the world who participated in the Siena Solutions Challenge pilot program, where we got some really good feedback from them and how they were able to interact with the challenge. And something that we learned from the educators during the pilot is that, students found a lot of ownership and agency within their projects. And one of those ways that educators were able to do that was to, really share and really be transparent about what the project is and how it will be evaluated. And so we decided to make this is not the form that you'll use per se to submit your project. You'll submit your project in the submission portal, but this is something for you to download and kind of share with your students within class, or maybe another time. You can email it to them. You can even email it to families if they want to learn a little bit more about what the project is. You can also see the award judging rubric is right here. You can see where or how the projects will be scored: beginning, developing, and exemplary. And those percentages that I mentioned are right here underneath the descriptions. And so just want to keep this in mind. If you haven't taken a look at it on our website, be sure to download this. It's super helpful as you are getting ready to maybe submit your project or submit your draft. and you just want to make sure that you're on the right track, this is a great tool to use. I will also add that link to the chat box. I'm a one-woman show today, so I want to make sure that I'm not messing anything up. So I'll make sure to add that at the end of our time today. One more thing I want to mention, like I said, if you all are new to the challenge, or maybe you haven't been able to browse the site as much, maybe you're just coming back from break and you're just kind of wanting to look at the site, we do have a resource library on siennachallenge.org. And if you are at the beginning phases, like I said, you know, we understand that the deadline is January 31st, but maybe you have a project that you wanted to submit to another challenge, and now you are looking to submit it to the Sienna Challenge, and it really aligns with the initiative. We welcome you to submit and try it out. You can take a look at the resource library. The facilitator's guide is a great place to start, or you could take a look at the facilitator's guide if you're nearing the end of your project and you're ready to submit. We have some great content in the facilitator's guide where educators can use some resources and maybe some talking points if your students are at the end of their project and you want them to reflect on, you know, what all the great work that they put in and the effort they put into the project. Take a look at the facilitator's guide and any other resources that we have in the resource library. They are available in English, Spanish, and French, and they're totally free, adaptable resources for educators and students. So I just want to make sure that I'm keeping this up in mind for anyone who's looking for some extra resources, extra activities for students. You can share them. They're all pretty much Google Docs, but they're shareable. So you're welcome to share that. And apologies for the noise. I live in a city. I live in Washington, DC, so it's always very loud. All right, so we're nearing the end of our time today. And I just want to make sure that, again, I'm announcing the submission deadline has been extended to January 31st. Originally, it was January 10th, but given the disruptions of most schools amid COVID and the variants, we are extending the submission deadline to January 31st. If you have already submitted a project, you also now have until January 31st to make any updates or revisions to your entry. If you just submitted a draft, it's super safe. Nothing has happened to it. So you are welcome to still go in there and make any updates, or if you're ready to submit, you have time to make any edits between now and January 31st. And if you have not, again, submitted, we highly, highly encourage you to familiarize yourself with the submission portal in advance of the deadline. So that was the portal that I shared earlier in the call. And that is all that I have for you all today. I'm gonna take a pause here and give you all an opportunity to ask questions. You are welcome to ask any questions in the chat box if you're in a place where you can't talk, or if you would prefer to come off mute, you are welcome to do that. All right, it doesn't look like we have any questions. No problem, Grace. Great to see you on the call today. I hope you got all the information you needed.
Yes, I've got the information.
Oh.
Thank you so much.
Let me see if my video will work today. Can you see me okay?
Yes, I can see you.
Awesome. My internet was so spotty earlier, so I'm glad that it's working. What was your question?
I would like to know if you submit 3 or 4 projects, are the 3 or 4 projects going to be funded, or it will be only one project to be funded? Sustainability award.
That's a great question. So we have 20 awards that we will be sharing or providing or awarding rather to people all over the world. So if your projects happen to be, scored really well, it may be possible that it could be funded, but it really just kind of depends on how they're evaluated and how it's scored by the evaluators. So I don't want to guarantee it, but it really just sort of depends on how the projects are evaluated. It could be a possibility that it can be funded because you are able to submit up to 5 projects to be considered. So if you submit 3 to 4 projects to be considered for a sustainability award, we may be able to support those. Again, it depends on how they all score, are scored by judges and where they sort of fall against all projects that are submitted. And like I mentioned, we have 20 awardees or 20 awards that we're hoping to award to folks that submit. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Enos. Thanks for joining. I noticed that you joined a little late, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Happy to help.